As promised, doing another video on the topic of aging abroad. In case you missed my previous conversation with Maggie of Single Women Retiring Abroad in Panama, there is a link in the description of this video. As I mentioned in the previous video in this series, we want to have more conversations on this channel about what it means to live abroad at an older age and age outside of your home country. And that will look different if you are a single person, if you bring your family with you, if you are a part of a married couple. And so my guests today are a married couple, Halisi and Rick of Our Black Utopia. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Adelia Aborshade. Although most people know me as Picky Girl Travels the World, I am a financial educator and coach who left the U.S. Nearly 10 years ago. I've since lived in 4 different countries. And on this channel, we talk about all those money things that nobody taught you growing up. We talk about how you can travel the world, as well as what it's like to live in another country and how you can too. So if those are topics that are of an interest to you, be sure to subscribe to the channel so that YouTube can continue to bring my content to your feed. Well, I guess I should introduce y'all, or y'all can introduce yourselves.
All right. I'm Halisi.
And I'm Rick.
And this is not Our Black Utopia.
No.
But we are the founders of Beyond the Bling. That's a financial freedom program for late bloomers like ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we help Black folks, black folks. And so we're on Substack, we're on YouTube, and Instagram under at Our Black Utopia.
And we live in Portugal, y'all.
Yes. Going on 4 years.
Going on 4 years.
Can you believe that? Wasn't that fast?
Time does fly. It really, really does. Okay, so the reason I brought y'all here today, because Halisi has been on the channel 3 times now. This is Rick's first appearance. This is also, Rick is the first man that will ever, and probably be the only man ever on my channel.
I feel privileged. I really do. Thank you so much.
You should. It is a great honor. But, you know, the main reason I wanted to talk to y'all is because I've been doing a series talking about aging abroad and retiring abroad and addressing that, because I feel like a lot of the conversation in this space that both you and I work in is really focused on the move. How do I afford to get there? How do I get there? How do I find an apartment? And there's also a lack in the larger conversation about, okay, so what happens when you're not working anymore? What happens when you start to get older and less able? And so I wanted to have you two come on because I have some questions for y'all, and I thought my audience would appreciate your knowledge. I want to kind of start pre-2020. And if I would have asked y'all pre-2020 about your vision, your plan for retirement and subsequent aging, what would that have looked like?
Depressing.
A hope and a dream is what it would have looked like. Because, I mean, we had this vague notion, I think I've told you this before, that we were going to buy a Winnebago, and not just an RV, but a Winnebago. I don't even know if they still make them. And tootle around making documentaries.
Right.
Now, in our dream, did we still own any, like the house in Denver?
I think we probably still would have owned the house in Denver, but
we had no plan, girl.
No.
We had a hope and a dream. The only thing that I can say is that we were really working on getting out of debt. So we were at least doing that part. But I think we, deep down inside, if we admitted it to ourselves, we thought we were going to have to work until we die.
I definitely did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it was depressing sitting down with those
Financial
financial.
advisors.
Well, y'all know how I feel about those folks who are just salesmen dressed up. Okay, so y'all were kind of like, you had more of a plan than I did, because I hoped that I could retire at some point, but that was unclear. And I just know that at some point you retire and you don't work, and then, there's some vague ideas about Medicare, Social Security, but like I didn't know how any of that stuff works. So pre 2020, you thought if you could retire, what the dream retirement would look like, you in the Winnebago making films. Now, I purposely asked that question about life pre 2020 because I know that 2020 changed a lot for y'all and changed your trajectory. And that's part of why you currently live in Lisbon, Portugal. Now, when you made the decision to leave the US, and, because we've talked about it on this channel, I believe originally you thought maybe South Africa, maybe Spain. Portugal wasn't the first place you initially thought of, but did retirement, did aging figure into that decision when you were planning to move abroad at all?
Yeah, it did because, especially if you're moving somewhere else outside of the United States, your support system kind of dwindles down because, not that we were going to have to count on the kids or anything like that anyway, but I wasn't going to hold my breath. Having to think that I have to count on them to do something for me. But it kind of does. But
I want to remind him of the conversations we was having back in the day because you were scared, and I had to show you the math. Okay, and so the bottom line is there's no way we could have afforded to retire in the United States at that point in time with the money that we had, and I was not yet. I don't qualify for Medicare. He did, but I don't. Right, still don't. So. And of course, they jacked up the ACA, so that wasn't looking that good, and so we looked at the numbers and we're like, we got to go somewhere where there's universal health care. We got to go somewhere where if we need someone to come in and help us, we can afford their hourly rate. And, I was looking for places for my dad. And so I knew, like in a traditional place, you talking about 6,000 on up.
Oh, yeah.
And the 6,000 place, y'all don't want that for your parents. Y'all don't want that. I'm just trying to tell you. So I was like, oh yeah, and I started to realize when right after the inoculations, we went to Cancun, and I needed to hire someone to come in every day, even though our youngest son was staying at our house as well, because, it's COVID still, right? But we was out going to Cancun for a little bit and looking for someone to help take care of my dad, to come in during the day just to make sure, because, these kids.
Yeah.
That cost, do you remember?
Oh, yeah. I definitely remember.
How do people do it?
Yeah.
I think and maybe that's the thing that radicalized me, was when my mom had a stroke, like she was 57, 59. And I all of a sudden was confronted with what this costs. Because I said this with the last person I spoke to, Maggie, down in Panama. She is, I forget the correct word. She works with old people. She ran like a home healthcare service, and she was a nurse. So she's very versed in that. But I think for the average person, they don't find out until they are confronted with either that of a parent or the cost of their own care. And so finding out like what the numbers are, because we all have this general idea of like, yes, when you get old and you can't take care of yourself anymore, you move to a nursing home. But nobody has any idea what that costs.
No,
they don't.
no, no.
And it goes up more. It goes up every year.
Yes.
It just doesn't stop climbing.
And people need to understand the difference between like a nursing home and assisted living, and then those like senior communities and stuff like that. They're all different. And the most expensive is going to be a nursing home. The most depressing is going to be a nursing home.
You ain't lied on that.
Yeah, I'm telling you. But you know what? Like my mom should have known better, because we went through this with her dad, right? And he had a stroke and had to have 24-hour care. Did she learn? We had to like put the house in another name and, do all the maneuvering and all of that stuff. And here's another thing, like that was in California. So I knew what the situation it was in California, but Colorado ain't California, right? And they don't have the same safety net that California does, nor does it have the same taxes. But, and so me assuming that I knew how the system worked based upon my grandfather, and then realizing, oh, state to state, it's different, y'all. It is different, and who qualifies for what and all of that, it is different state to state. So don't think that because you went through this in another state that you know how the current system works wherever you're at.
The number of times I have heard somebody tell me, like, we should have known, or they should have known, because we just went through this with my grandfather, my grandmother, and the parent involved still didn't do it and is still leaving behind or creating a situation where everybody's kind of looking at each other like, who's got money for this? And, one of the things that I rail on about is American culture tends to be very death phobic. We don't want to have these conversations. We don't want to talk about what it's going to cost, what I want, how much money there actually is. And if I need this assistance, y'all gonna have to chip in, and what that's gonna look like. Nobody wants to have that conversation, as if not having the conversation is gonna keep it from happening.
Right.
Yes.
In other words, we're all gonna die.
Yeah, we're all gonna die.
That's the bottom line.
Okay, so as you at the time that y'all were contemplating leaving the US, you also had this experience. You're looking at the numbers and you're like, we can't do this here. Good thing we're leaving anyway. You mentioned universal health care.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk a little bit about what that looks like for y'all? Because Rick, I know you're 70, and Elise, what are you, like 61, 62?
61.
Okay. So what, because not that this video is about like moving abroad, but one of the things I hear people put as a roadblock to their possibility of leaving the US is this concern about healthcare, as if US healthcare is not a shit show. So can you talk a little bit about what that looks like, universal healthcare, particularly at y'all's ages?
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, it's there. It's there for more catastrophic type things that if you suffering from cancer or something like that, and you really, really need that help, well, universal health care will kick in. A lot of people say, well, you have to wait forever for this, you have to wait for that, but it's there.
Yeah. You don't have to wait forever when it's.
You don't have to wait forever. It's there, and it's something that is there.
Yeah.
And it's not going anywhere.
As immigrants, we have to have private health insurance.
Right.
So we don't experience the public system the way folks who don't have private health insurance do. And I would say the majority of the people who are when we're in the waiting room are Portuguese, so they have private health insurance as well. But it's less expensive because the private system works hand in hand with the public system. And so some things are always going to be public, like your drugs, whatever medicines you need are going to be covered by the public system. We pay those taxes to make sure.
Well,
that it's,
yeah.
oh, yes.
You
I
pay the
got to pay the
taxes.
taxes this year. Yes. But it is like when I look at how much the taxes we had to pay and how much we pay in private health care insurance, we were paying more than that on his employee-based insurance. Just our portion was, and this was back in the day. This was back in 2022.
Right.
Yeah. We were paying about $6,000 a year in 2022 as our portion of the employee-based insurance. And and our private insurance here is just over $2,000 now. They can't discriminate against pre-existing. So our experience has been that you need to have about 3 to 5 years of proof
continuous coverage.
Yeah, that you've been covered. And then a lot of insurances will cover you or cover that pre-existing.
You said they can discriminate. They don't have to. The private does not have to accept you if you have a pre-existing condition.
Right.
No.
But the public won't.
Like for me, because I have a pre-existing with thyroid. And, the questions that were asked to me, well, were you covered throughout the thing, which I could prove that, yes, my employer, I had insurance and stuff like that. So instead of really dinging me for it, they said, well, there are certain things with the thyroid that we won't cover for a year.
Yeah.
6 months to a year. And then after that, we'll cover it. Well, I've been covered. So,
but here's the other thing. The system is so affordable in comparison to the United States that a lot of this stuff you could just pay for out of pocket. Yeah. You really can. Like I remember needing to get a physical for my son when he was going to college. This was way back in 2010 or something. And it hadn't been a full year. And so they were going to charge me something like $400 and something crazy for a physical.
Oh my gosh.
Right. Whereas here, it's going to be 80 euro, 90 euro or whatever. That's without insurance, On the other hand, mammograms and stuff like that, you can, like, I remember mammogram was like $500 without insurance. Here it's about $150.
Okay. Now, what about, is there a point at which your private insurance, is there an age at which they will not offer coverage? Because that was something that I had to look into when I got my private insurance here in Mexico.
There are some insurances that will drop you. There are some insurances that won't cover you at a certain age.
Right.
That's why we work with the medical concierge service, because they choose insurance companies that don't drop you at a certain age.
But then they said, too, there's somebody's going to cover you.
Yeah,
somebody will cover you.
Exactly. It just might not be as cost effective as ours is, right?
It might be at a higher price point, but your coverage, and like she said, a lot of it is affordable. A lot of it you can come out of pocket, and you're not going to, and we always try to tell people this, is they're not out there to bankrupt you.
Exactly.
They're not out there to bankrupt you. Before we started, you had asked a question, and we had to restart, but how everything was. And I'm preparing to have surgery on my leg. And I look at the cost of how much it's going to cost me out of pocket to have that surgery, and it's like mind-blowing.
The maximum amount it's going to be is $700.
$700 €750.
MA surgery.
€750?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be up to 10% of the total,
So depending upon what they have to do.
depending on what they
So,
have to
but it's
do.
not going to, it could be as little as 300 or 400.
Yeah. It's as little as 250, as high as 750.
I have some vague ideas of what surgery costs in the United States. And I'm sitting here dumbfounded by
Right.
this number because, you know, I can think about times in the States when they would say like, oh, you're responsible for 10%, 20%, and you have no idea what that number could be. That could be
Right.
Right.
tens of thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm. 10 or 20% of what?
Yeah.
And that's
Exactly.
another thing. The system here is very transparent.
Just very.
So because I've had exploratory surgery as well. And I think all in, I ended up spending about 400, but that's including all of the pre-op stuff that I had to do. I had to get a chest x-ray and an MRI and a Doppler and all of this, all these letters of stuff, a battery of tests, So for all of those tests and the surgery itself, it came up to about €400 or €500. Yeah, to prove that I don't have cancer. So Yahoo.
Okay, so that is generally one of the big things people are worried about is healthcare. I don't know a whole lot about Medicare, but I know that there are some people who, because they were qualified for Medicare or they would eventually qualify, like they build that into their plan.
Right.
And is that something y'all are doing where you go back to the US to take advantage of those benefits?
I still have Medicare Part B. Part A is free. I still have Medicare Part B for when we are in the United States. So I am covered for a lot of things.
So we don't have to
in the
get
United
safety
States.
wing in the United States for $5,000 for
Yeah.
2 days.
So it's pretty much there for that. But other than that, no.
The doctors here are better. Okay. That's not fair. The doctors here have more time to be better.
They take more time.
Right. They're allowed to. They don't have these
Right.
insurance companies dictating, and so when you go to the doctor here, their examination room, the bathroom, everything is within their office. They're not running around from room to room to room, okay, now the nurse is going to come in and do this and she'll be back and talk to you for a second. Then she's off seeing another patient. No. You go in there, you're talking just to them,
Mm-hmm.
And then you go in the bathroom, put on the little paper robe or whatever you need to do and get your butt up on the examination table, all within their office. So it's dedicated time, an hour dedicated to you and all of the questions. So it's a whole different experience. And I think that when the doctor knows your behavior, your lifestyle and stuff like that, they can be more responsive.
That has what you're saying mirrors my experience here in Mexico.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that, and I think y'all got this better than I do. Like I got private insurance on my own as somebody who lives here, and it's basically catastrophic coverage.
Mhm.
And so I find for a lot of folks from the States, there is the assumption like, oh, if I go to the doctor, they need to cover preventative care. They need to cover, like, I should have low co-payments and that sort of thing. Whereas, like, I needed a mammogram and I went to Chopo and it was the equivalent of like $24. I didn't even need to show anything from a doctor to go. I just said, this is what I need. And they were like, great, this is what you need to do. And so that the control and the freedom I have in my medical care, like I would be hard pressed to give that up. You said, Rick, that like a lot of it can be paid for out of pocket. Do y'all find that you're doing that more, or is your private insurance structured in a way that they're covering these things?
No, they take care of it. It's, I mean, half the time I walk out of the hospital, They don't even pay my bill until I get home, and then I'll get an email.
Yeah, and it's like 14 €
You
or
know,
something like
to
that.
pay the email, and I go straight to the account. Boom, pay the bill off. You can pay it in the hospital. They don't. Sometimes they might say, "Do you want to pay your bill?"
Yeah.
If you want to, you can. If you don't, you
See,
don't.
it's all attached to your national health
Yeah.
number, so they know who you are,
Yeah, they
right?
know.
Right,
See,
and
and
you will
that
not be right.
that is the difference. A country like Mexico is not good as much as there is bureaucracy here, like logistics is not the strong suit. So, yes, I have a national number, but nobody's ever asking for that. So, there's no connection between me and the hospital, which is why when a friend of a friend had a 90% tear in his ACL, no, his
Oof.
Achilles, um,
Mm,
Okay.
mm.
they showed up on his way to surgery with the terminal for the credit card so that more could be. Oh,
Wow.
yes. Yes, you pay as you go, which,
Okay.
you know, if we're talking about planning for retirement and planning to age abroad, that's something that you've got to understand about the place that you live. I live in a place where they do not send you bills in the mail. That stuff has to be handled right then. And so it's impendent on me to make sure I either got the cash, I got somebody who can bring the cash, or I got a credit card that's got space on it for them to do that. But what
Yeah.
I'm hearing from y'all is that the Europeans have figured this out. Much more seamless process.
Yeah, I mean, and
Now,
even your prescriptions and stuff like that, everything follows you. Everything,
Yeah,
you
it's all on
know,
the
when
number.
you walk away from your doctor, I can go to any pharmacy anywhere and get my prescriptions filled.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, it's kind of handy.
so it sounds to me like healthcare as you age is not really a concern.
No.
Healthcare isn't. I think some people might ask the question of if they had to go to a place like
Like a
adult
nursing home.
care, nursing home, or something like that,
That's
where
going to
would
be
they
an issue.
go?
That's going to be an issue.
Because there's not a lot of here. But I think it's being brought to the minds in the forefront that this is a business opportunity for y'all.
Yeah, some people. Yeah, I know Serenity has been talking to people about that as well,
Yes.
trying to get more. But look,
And
I'm
tell
not
them
interested.
who Serenity is.
Okay, so Serenity Cares is a concierge service, medical concierge service. We don't get a kickback or anything. We've been using them since we got here.
Mhm.
And the other good thing is they hook you up with doctors who can speak English.
Yes.
So they know that they've got, and they'll make your appointments for you.
They
So you
make
don't
you-
have to worry about this.
Yeah.
I don't know how this.
All you have to do
I'm
is show
spoiled.
up.
I'm
All
spoiled.
you have to do is show up. They do everything for you. The hospital, in preparing for this surgery, upcoming surgery I'm going to have, the hospital got in touch with me. Somebody I didn't know wrote me a letter and was asking me, well, what happened? What was the accident that caused, your injury? And I kept trying to explain there was no accident. It just, my doctor said it was like a birth defect thing. And I contacted my case nurse at Serenity and showed her the letter that was written to me. She immediately got in touch with them, told him who she was and what she was to me, and explained to him in Portuguese it was no accident, and the doctor knows this, and he should be blah blah blah. Next thing you know, boom, I was getting approvals for this and that and everything else.
Yeah, they're godsend.
They
They're godsend.
they
Like
are.
there
They're
needs
truly
to be
great.
something like that everywhere where there's a language barrier, because trying to deal with new systems and the language at the same time can be frustrating.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
And so even I know it probably works this way in Mexico. Your test results get handed to you when you leave, or they get sent to you, depending upon if there has to be some processing. But like for my mammogram, I walked out of there with some files, which is just so weird. But yeah, and so you've got to take all of that stuff with you. Now, the good part about it is like, especially for written test results, you can send them to Serenity, and they'll give you an initial interpretation and let you know if you die in or not.
Because their staff consists of RNs, they're nurses, then they have a few doctors on staff.
Yeah.
They have elderly care doctor. What do we call this?
Geriatric
Doctors. So they have these people on staff too that you can go and see them, or you could talk to them and do anything that you need to do. But they take care of a lot of things for you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say they don't provide these services out of the kindness of their heart, and that there is a cost associated with it. So, are you paying annually, quarterly, or is it as you use it, you pay a certain amount?
It's annual, and it's not cheap. It's not expensive either, but to me, it's worth it. I think we pay when it first started. It was really like, I think they knew they were undercharging for what they offer. I think we pay something like $250 a year per person.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not that bad.
It's not bad.
But it's like, okay, here comes that $500, 500 euro, not dollars.
But
euro.
like you said, it's not that bad for what you're getting, because peace of mind that you get, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Like, as a matter of fact, we need to make sure Tawana is talking to them, because like it's a new system. It's a brand new system. And it took me 6 weeks of me trying to get our insurance to approve my thing, because I thought I was giving them what they wanted.
Lost in translation, I call it.
They got them involved. 24 hours later, got approved. Yeah. Boom, done.
No, that all sounds well worth the money.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. I am surprised that there hasn't been more of that here. Given the number of foreigners here and so few of them speak the language, it is very surprising to me that they don't.
I know they just expanded to the UK for their services.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's just happened within probably the last month or so.
Okay, good for them.
But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of opportunity. It's so funny. There's people that are here,
right here, Spain, France. The systems are all a little bit different, right? And how they interact with private versus public, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I see opportunities.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think y'all's president just bombed Ecuador. So I was about to say Colombia, Ecuador.
Their president, Ecuador. Okay, I do have a question that I hadn't asked, but since you brought that man up, okay, given where we are right now in 2026 and all of the things that have happened in the last 2 months. Oh my God, it's only been 2 months.
Yeah.
Do you still think that like Portugal is the place that y'all are going to age out, I don't know what the proper term there is.
Yeah. I don't know. Like when we first got here, I would have said yes. But it's not the same world, and had, the United States been smarter and elected Kamala, it might have just been kicking the can down the road for something that's kind of inevitable, So they ripped the Band-Aid off, and the emperor's not wearing any clothes and all of those other metaphors. And so now, like, I think what we're witnessing is, a seismic shift in power, right? And I just want to stay out of these folks' way, right? Like, I'm not trying to get involved in no European tribal wars. That's for doggone sure. And then what's happening in the Middle East is disturbing, and the United States folks getting stuck in Dubai. That's disturbing. That was supposed to, be a safe place. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, actually, about the illusion of safety. But, so I think that we will remain nimble for now.
Yeah.
And once my mom transitions on, then there's going to be more options on the globe for us. But for now, we've got to stay a little bit closer to the States, you know. But yeah, because these folks cray.
So, well, I am glad that you brought that up and I asked that question because there may be somebody watching this who feels like if the thought is, I want to be outside the US, and that means I am going to grow older and eventually die outside the US, they may feel that like it's a one and done sort of thing, that they have to pick a country and it has, like all this work has to go into picking the right country. And what I'm hearing y'all are saying is, with the information we had at the time, this was the best move. And as long as it continues to be the best move, this is where we will be. But otherwise, we will move and adjust and, go with the flow from there.
Yeah, I think you've got to remain nimble. And the other thing is that, you might be adding about 10 years onto your life by leaving and remaining nimble. One, it's less stress, but two, you got to keep this working, and learning new systems and all of that stuff keeps this, nimble as well. Yeah, these folks cray. And I don't know why we think, and we get this with our clients too, Adelia, like they think they're going to come here and they're going to buy some like house, with a garden or a backyard and whatnot, like some suburban house and basically replant their American life. Now, Angela and Lamar did, but there's less room here than there is in Mexico, especially if you want to be close to a city. So, it's a different lifestyle. And I would urge people to try a different way. So they might be surprised.
Oh, yeah.
How much less you need when you leave the land of consumption.
Yeah. Politically here, I'm not concerned about things. It's more, we've got some environmental issues. It is very possible that in less than 10 years, half of this city will be underwater. This came out of the university over the summer because we had so much rain. And remember, Mexico City is built on a lake and the water still drains like we're in the lake. So a big chunk of this city it should be underwater. So I have to think about those things of, okay, so when it becomes environmentally to the point that I can't live here,
right.
what's my next move? What's my next option? So yeah, it might be for different reasons. Okay, but for the foreseeable future, y'all will be in Lisbon. You'll be in Portugal. When I spoke to Maggie, because she has a group called Single Women Retiring Abroad. And really, it is giving folks community, like, who are your emergency contact numbers to make sure like folks don't get where something happens and nobody finds them in their house for 5 days.
Right.
We talked about the importance of community. Now, is that something that y'all have been able to start building and nurturing there in Lisbon?
Yeah, I think it's been organic. Excuse me, it's been organic, but we've been talking about it a lot more. And I think we've been talking about it a lot more partially because I heard you talking about it. And when you're in a couple, you kind of forget. You kind of forget. And so Rick's really good with keeping in touch with folks. And I check in with the single women that I know, especially the ones that I know moved here because of us. Like, it's like, oh, why'd you put that on me? Now I feel responsible. Right. So, but yeah, we've been talking about, people partnering up.
Yeah, we do that a lot. But, it's because we're getting older. And a lot of people we know are getting older. And and having to go to the doctor and having things,
Surgery.
surgeries and stuff like
Quite a
that.
few
So I
people.
try to keep up with as much as I can, and as many as I can through holidays or just dropping notes, dropping a text. Hey, how you doing? I ain't heard from you. I ain't seen you. Everything good?
Yeah.
Vice versa. Just hit me back. Let me know everything's good.
But we don't have anything formal.
No.
But we have been mentioning it. So hopefully folks are listening and doing the things.
Yeah,
That
that's
that
important.
that's part of my hope in having these conversations
Yeah.
is, to get people to start thinking about it. One of the ladies in our circle here, uh, way too young, had a stroke last year. Like 53.
Wow.
And so, there was very much a concern of like, okay, who's close by? Like, believe it or not, it's actually low key lucky she had it on an airplane. But had that happened while she was here, both myself and Ivana are like, well, what do we do? Who would we call? How do ambulances work? So like I'm hoping by having these conversations, it's making people start to think about these things and ask some of those questions like, oh, if I needed to go to the hospital, who would be the person to make sure they have my credit card to pay the guy with the terminal, all of
Right.
those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. We have got given people it's 211, right?
No, 112.
112. See, I'd have been calling 211. It ain't one.
You're going to talk to somebody saying, who, why? A 112 is the emergency number
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. I think I would have figured that out. Hopefully.
And they don't take
So
you, they take you to
The
the
public.
public hospital.
Mm-hmm. You don't go to the
They
public.
don't take you to a COOF, which is more private hospital or
Any of the other privates.
yeah. So you have to go, and then once you get there, and then you can move on. But they take you directly to the public hospital.
Yep.
here you can generally tell them where to take you unless it's like you got hit by a bus or something.
Right.
But again, you need to do the work beforehand of, okay, what are the hospitals I want? Like, I have to give Ivana a list of if such and such happens, tell them to take me here. Like with my health insurance, there are some hospitals here in the city that overcharge, and my health insurance was like, if you go there, we will only pay 60%. So I made sure that my emergency contact, I was like, these are the places they cannot take me
Right.
because
Right.
I need the insurance to pay everything. So, it is about thinking about those things and then being in community and communicating them to someone so that somebody knows.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, things get left on their own. All right. So we talked about health insurance. We talked a little bit about Medicare. What have y'all thought about or put into motion for like long-term care?
Yeah. Well, it all depends, right? It all depends. So first of all, I have to say, if it's just me, if I'm the only one left, I definitely am going to do a Golden Girls type of thing, right? But for us, one of the things, like, let's just assume we're going to stay here. Right now, we're on a walk up, so that has to change. So we have to move to a place with an elevator. So that's the next place that we look for. Will definitely have an elevator, even though I'm going to try to take the stairs. We'll see if that works. And then I have been looking at and kind of adding into the budget what it's going to cost for somebody to come in on a regular basis. So, and when I say regular basis, like every day. So yeah, we're, that is feeding into my, or actually taking away from my travel budget. But, and we're being a lot more cautious now, because what we didn't mention is, since the melon felon has gotten in, so since the beginning of 2025, the value of the dollar is just crap,
Dropping, yeah.
right? Like when we moved here, we were in the positive, you know, it was 98 cents got you a euro. Before he got into office, it was the opposite. 1 euro was like $1.02. So it swung 4 cents. Okay. That's parity enough, right? That is parity enough. Now it's gotten down to like 83 cents.
Yeah.
So it's like 15% of your wealth gone. Boom. Which is why we charge in euros. So,
that makes sense. And okay, so you said you added it to the budget. So I want to make this clear for somebody watching this. This is literally like a line item in your budget each month or what have you. Y'all are setting aside a certain amount of money.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's going in one of those buckets.
In our buckets, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the idea is putting the money away now when y'all don't need somebody to come in and letting it grow so
Mm-hmm.
that you have even more money to spend on care. And when you say somebody to come in, are we talking like nurse's aide? Are we talking about a nurse?
I'm thinking more like a nurse aide. I'm not planning for a nurse, because if it needs to be a nurse, then we're probably looking at like nursing home. Like, what are we talking about? You know what I'm saying? And then, so and that's another thing. So, time to live healthier, it was nice, but time to start exercising more and stuff like that.
Getting more, yeah.
I mean, all of that, because first of all, there's still so many places I want to see, and I want to be able to see them while I can walk and everything's fine. Right. So there's that. But also, hopefully it's just about not having the energy to keep a clean house, not having the energy to grocery shop and things like that. That's my hope. But either way it goes, they should be able to do a bit more than that.
At that point where I'm having to come to terms with like there comes a point in life where exercise is no longer optional. And I'm a little in my feelings about that. But because I don't want to break a hip, because what is it like? Is 30% chance you die from that? Like you don't come back within a year? Like I'm not trying to do that. So I'm like, okay, that means I have to do this, I have to do that, and that sort of thing. And from a financial perspective, that may mean also budgeting for the gym, for whatever classes you're taking or what have you. And Halisi said she had to cut back a little bit on the travel. So it is, I'm just mentioning that again because I want people to understand that, living and being healthy as an older person is very possible, but there are some sacrifices you have to make. There are some, you can't just hope for it. You've got to be intentional and put some things into place. You could be here just hoping and dreaming that when y'all need it, you can have somebody come. But if you're not putting away the money, who gonna pay them?
Exactly.
That's a surprise that you do not want to find out. Yeah, you don't want to see that.
But y'all did not do like long-term care insurance or anything like that. Is that even a thing?
We had long-term health insurance.
Yeah, I still have long-term care.
She does.
Because it's so inexpensive. I've had it forever through my job, and it was portable, so I got to take it with me. And I think I pay like $200 a year. So
that is incredibly affordable. Will it cover you outside the U.S., you think?
No, I don't think so. But it's really just a just in case, because there's just too many unknowns, and not unknowns from what we want to do, but unknowns about how the world is going to be. Right. And so again, just want to remain nimble, have options. I have no desire to go back to the United States. God.
I am acting as if, you know, those folks who you're in a taxi somewhere and the taxi driver is an immigrant and they tell you about their war-torn country and how they love it, but they can't go back. I'm behaving as if I am one of those people.
Those people.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, every long-term plan I have presupposes the United States is not an option for me.
For me. Yep. Yep.
So I have to move accordingly and think about those things.
I wish my
now
kid would
this,
think that way. You know, I wish the United States was not an option for him, but unfortunately he's not there yet.
yeah, I'm having the same issue, having to make my peace with the fact that they will probably elect to stay, and I am unlikely to return. So
Right.
what does that mean for us as a family? What does that look like? What does that look like as I get older?
Yep.
Right.
You know, all things to think about and figure out. One of the things, now this I wanted to get y'all's perspective on, because one thing, again, we talked about, a lot of folks focus on the move. Do I buy? Do I rent? How do I get a visa? All of that. And folks don't really think about the estate complexities that they are creating when they have a life that spans multiple countries. I no longer own any real estate in the United States. So I have uncomplicated a lot of things. And, you know, I'm looking at, what do you call it? Like living wills here in Mexico. Sometimes Mexico is not a real place. And so, yes, those things exist, but does anybody like believe in them? I don't know. So Ivana and I have lots of conversations about what she is to tell people and that sort of thing. But y'all's estate is a little bit more complex than mine. And so I am curious as to how you are navigating that. Like, do you have a Portuguese will? Have you done or looked into, you know, what is it called when you tell the people what you want? Like, do you want a DNR and all that kind of stuff? I forget what that's called.
Like end of life.
End of life.
Yeah. Have y'all looked at the things you had in the US and like duplicating them in Portugal? I don't know. Y'all tell me.
We haven't done that yet for Portugal.
But we know we have to.
Yeah, we know we have to. We know it's something that
it does not transfer, folks. It does not.
We just haven't done it yet, like we have in the United States.
Yeah,
and we need to do it.
We do need to do it, and actually, we need to update our trust as well. So that's another thing. Just because you do it doesn't mean you don't keep it updated. So we need to update ours. Mm-hmm. And we know good and doggone well, because we've had talks with attorneys who come on to the Move to Portugal Summit and tell us, you should probably get, especially same-sex couples should probably get married again here. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't know if we're going to go that far, but yeah, all your will, estate plan, all that stuff has to be redone. There's totally different laws, but we'll probably do a will. Until we get permanent, not thinking that our places in the United States fall under Portuguese laws, because see, they don't be playing here. And when you own something by law, it must be divided equally amongst your kids, period, the end. They don't care who you like or who you don't like. So that is my understanding. And unless something has changed, right, that's how it is. And so, yeah.
Well, I just found out today, in order to get a death certificate in Mexico, you must have a birth certificate, and that birth certificate must be apostilled.
Okay.
So as I discovered this, I leaned over to tell Ivana, I was like, hey, when I die, you're going to need to, here's where my birth certificate is. You're going to need to give the people. And she was like, what am I proving, that you're you? And I was like, I don't know. But And it's probably going to be a mess because they won't issue a death certificate without a birth
without a birth
certificate.
certificate.
Okay, so that's a question we're going to have to ask, because
Yeah,
that's one that I have not asked, and
yeah.
Lord knows I didn't have to show my father's birth certificate to get his death certificate,
No.
in the
So
States.
when we say that the processes, most people aren't uber familiar with the processes back in the States. But when we say that the processes in other countries are different,
Different.
They're different.
Baby,
They are truly different.
I want to, really, really encourage people not to take this lightly. That's for sure, right? Like, it is taboo to speak about it in the United States. We've spoken about it quite often on our channel. And we've talked about even from a sandwich generation point of view, right? So there you need to plan for both. Managing, 80-year-old parents from abroad as you are aging, as well as, right?
let's talk about that a little bit,
Yeah.
because I know at one point you were having to manage things for two parents
Mm-hmm.
from
Mm-hmm.
thousands of miles, multiple time zones away. What, I don't know, what'd you learn? What would have made it easier for you? What are the things you wish you knew before?
Yeah. So the one thing that I know that I tell everyone is, don't assume that you understand what is going on with your parent. Really ask the doctors, because it's really easy to think because you know the terminology, like dementia, right? You think you know what that means, but you don't. And I know from talking to people that it's like, yeah, that's not what it is, baby. That's not what it is. So you really, I say, really want to have a clear understanding. Once you have that understanding, then you have a better idea of what kind of help they need, and get that all situated before you leave. Which I did not get to do for my dad. My mom already had doctors there in LA. See, he was going back to LA. So my mom already had doctors, but you know what? They weren't good. And so, be prepared. Like, for me, that means getting on video conference calls with the doctors, going through and really looking at their Yelp reviews, so to speak. And I'm particular, like, I'm starting with Black women. That's that first. I'm looking for a Black woman, and then I'll go to POCs from there. But why? Because I know they're going to give my parents better care, right? You really do have to be involved. Now, it helps that both. First, I was doing my mom when she was living on her own, but could not yet manage that 100% on her own, right? Or still do that. And then my dad was in the assisted living. Then my mom joined him in the assisted living. That helps, because the caregiver helps with the doctor's appointments and stuff like that, and helps me evaluate them in person. She knows that I don't play. So she'd be looking, making sure that they're listening and giving the best care that you're going to get in the United States. But it's more than a notion. It's more than a notion.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I was just sending the caregiver, screenshots of my mom's appointment for tomorrow. So all that stuff is on my calendar. My mom's appointments are on my calendar too. Yeah.
I think it is important to point out that there may be folks, or point this out to the folks who are in that sandwich generation and might be thinking that they've got to stay put because they've got to manage the care of, aging relatives. And what I'm hearing from you is it can be done
Can be done.
from another country, but it is not, you're not off the hook. You still got to work some stuff. You still got to manage, and that it is, it's better if you can put the team together before you leave, would you
Yeah.
say?
Yes. 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 And let them know what your expectations are, because especially if your parents are Medi, right? Medicare, Medicaid, they think that no one's paying attention. They have assumptions and they put them in a certain realm, and it's like, oh no. So um, I think you've got to be a lot more proactive in the United States when it comes to healthcare than you necessarily have to do here.
And I just thought about it, like I would assume you also need to have built in to the budget that you might have to roll up on them. You might need to do a
Oh yeah.
drive-by, pop up, much in the way you would if you lived still there. But now that you live in another country, that means airfare and probably a hotel and maybe a rental car. So anticipating those costs,
All
I
of
think,
that.
ahead of time can be useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we talk about this often, but like last year, first it was my aunt in February, and this is going back to California, not the East Coast. No. All the way to the West Coast. And then 3 months later it was my dad. So those were two sets of tickets that were planned for, but not planned for. You know, um, it's really important to have those allocations and just to assume that it's going to happen.
Yeah. I lost my brother and my sister within a year apart. I chose not to go back because I just don't do funerals. But
Yeah, I didn't go back for the funerals either. I went back when they were still alive, hanging on, so I could say goodbye. I'm bad, y'all. I'm bad. I don't do funerals.
but
No,
it's there. You know it's there, and you have to plan for it.
Yep.
you're not bad. It's about what's important. Um, I have a friend who just found out their mom was on hospice. And my friend was trying to weigh, like, do I go now versus am I going to go for the funeral? And I'm like, what's important to you? If it's important to you that they leave having seen you, having had an opportunity to say what they need to say, then that's what you focus on. Funerals are for the
Exactly.
living anyway.
Mm.
Exactly. And I don't like them. So it was good to, well, first of all, for my dad, that wasn't even going to be a question. But, and for my aunt, it's interesting because, my cousin-in-law said, so, thank you for coming all the way out here for Auntie, for Joanne. And I was like, I didn't come out for her because I knew at that point she probably wasn't going to pull through. I said, I came back for her son, right? He's going to need another shoulder to cry on, and that's the thing. And so, yeah, no, I will not be coming back for the funeral 3 weeks from now. That's what's not going to happen because I'm here now.
Yeah,
So,
and that is a part of the moving abroad that we don't really talk about, but it
yeah,
is something that you have to think about, okay, what's important to me? What are my values in these situations? And then plan accordingly.
Hmm.
So
yep,
I know I have this many elderly relatives. So I know I'm going to need to go back X number of times, and you try and forecast those things. And of course, prices go up,
yep,
currency values fluctuate. You do the best you can, but it's better than being caught off guard and being caught by surprise, I think.
Yeah.
exactly. And save up them points and everything else. You know, we be maxing out them points. But, I tell people, we put everything on the credit card, everything. And I wish more places took American Express so we get them points too. But because they be giving triple points, triple points. So if I'm saving for emergencies, I can use the points for my travel, and I can travel more,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Well, thank y'all for coming on the channel, for being open and candid and sharing. I appreciate it, and I think the audience here will appreciate it. And hopefully, we got folks thinking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
stuff.
I think so.
Yes.
I think so.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
I hope that you were able to take away some useful information and some action items as you are planning your move out of the US, or if you're already outside the US and had not given any thought to what you needed to do or what plans needed to be made in order for you to age outside the US. I'm hoping that this conversation, as well as my previous conversation with Maggie, gives you some items to get you started, to start that to-do list. Okay. Thanks for watching, guys.